Welcome everyone. I hope you are doing well. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Marion and I'm an international marketing specialist at the University of Tartu. I am very happy to welcome you to the Alumni Talks 2023 event, and I will be your host today. So Alumni Talks is our new series where our fantastic alumni share their story of studying at the University of Tartu, and they will give a short lecture on a topic they chose. So today I am here with Rhea. She has a master's degree in semiotics, and she graduated from the University of Tartu in 2021. So Rhea considers herself a strategist, storyteller, and a semiotician, and she is currently working as the head of marketing at an investment bank in Estonia. And today she's going to talk about how to apply semiotics in the advertising, branding, marketing, and finance industry. And also just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them to the Q&A box. We will address them at the end of the webinar. And if you have any technical difficulties, please write us in the chat box and we will try to help you resolve them. And also we are recording today's talk and all participants will receive a recording after the webinar. But now we can begin, and I would like to give a floor to our presenter today. So Rhea, if you are ready, you can start.
Thank you so much. I will just share my screen so you will stop seeing my face. I hope you can see it. Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start. I'm not sure how many of you know what semiotics is like, but the whole goal of my presentation is to also explain how to apply semiotics in like real world applications such as advertising, branding, marketing, app design, or finance industries, which is where I work. So I thought that's the best translation for today. So who am I? Why am I here talking to you? So I have a BA in economics and a minor in biology and a BS in advertising from Boston University, after which I did my master's in semiotics from the University of Tartu. Now I have over like 6 years of work experience in advertising and marketing. And as mentioned, I work as head of marketing at Bedford Row Capital. But how did I get from India to now the University of Tartu to study semiotics? 3 years ago, wow, that's a long time. Actually now it's 5. So 5 years ago, I attended this festival. It's called SemioFest. So it was basically a lot of advertising companies were called to understand how to use semiotics as a tool to better our strategies, our creative products. So I attended that, and that's where I learned like what is semiotics. Just to give a little bit of an explanation, like not the full length definition that you will sit and study for 2 years, but the way I understand it is basically it's a great way to understand how to make meaning, whether it be like from like you want to construct a world, you want to understand interactions, everything has meaning behind it, and the goal is to use semiotics to understand it. And learning semiotics has really helped me take my career to the next level, and I would like to explain how in some sort of way. So I started off with my thesis, which had like a real world application. Like I was contracted for like a freelance project to help on app design. So I try to understand like if it was possible to use semiotics in this case, and luckily it was, hence I had my thesis. And my whole goal for my thesis was to understand if I could create like the physical world of a neighborhood to then like make it on a digital space. And how do you basically understand how humans work in a society? How do they experience each other, interact with each other, build social capital between each other, and then reproduce that on the internet? So the goal was to use UI UX to then see how it can be derived like a language. And the goal was to do, first you identify a goal, then you construct a vision. And it's quite similar to writing a book is what I understood, because you have characters, you figure out who they are, what is the book about, you see how do you want one character to play with the other, and how do you create a setting, landscape, etc. So then the third goal would be to create a set of grammatical rules. So are you creating a fictional book? Are you creating a romance novel? And similarly, you can draw parallels when you create an app, is what the final study showed. So I used two different apps. One was Nextdoor and one was Neighborland. And then I deconstructed it to understand how to basically create a new app. But I try to do it more for the Indian audience. So the goal was to do this during COVID time because people were not able to talk to their neighbors, and how could they then be able to, but not feel the gap of the physical interaction that they had. So again, it was writing a book or creating a language. There are two main things that you require when you build a language. One is lexical rules and one is grammatical rules. So the thing is to understand there's A, B, C, D, E, okay, fine. So what would that be when you are creating an app? And then the other thing would be, okay, fine. So you need vowels and you need consonants, and then together they make a word. Now you have to use all of those parts, but you translate them in a way which is about an app. So an easy way to understand this is if you have to throw garbage, you use a garbage can or a trash bin or whatever it's called. And then if you go on your laptop, you will see that there is a trash can on your screen as well. Now, why was that used? It's basically a very physical explanation of what happens in the physical world, and then you understand, okay, fine, now if I want to delete something from my computer, all I have to do is throw it in that bin. So that's literally what I did, but on a larger scale to create a full app. And another interesting thing is you can now start to use semiotics with technology. So I basically used over 5,000 reviews. Now, if I did it by myself, that would have taken a long time to sit and decipher what each of them meant. So I use a natural language processing software called MonkeyLearn, and I coded in some ways to extract the text. However, obviously, because it's technology, there could have been a lot of loss of context, but it was actually a really easy way of dividing reviews into seeing what works, what kind of features work, what kind of interactions work, and do people like the way I have maybe put A with W to make or does it not work? So that's how I wrote my thesis. Now, once you leave the classroom, life changes. So I wanted to explain how, one, if you have a practical background, it can add a lot to your semiotic studies and vice versa. For me, I don't think that semiotics is something that you go out, if you're studying accounting, you know that you will become an accountant and there are things that you need to learn. However, if you become a semiotician, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a direct translation of what that job means. I think if you go on LinkedIn and you put semiotician, you're probably not going to find many job offers. However, if you use it as a tool to further a different aspect, which is more practical, it could be marketing, it could be economics, it could be anything, and you use that to your benefit, it can help you a lot more. It helps you in understanding how to apply the semiotic theories into practice. It can help you question why a certain thought process was used and how some parts of society have affected a certain thing, and that's why we now do something. So that's the first learning that I had. The second would be from university to regular work life. The one thing I've learned is that you should keep the theory in your mind. So during my time at university, I of course learned many valuable models, theories, and approaches. But once I went to work life, I realized Monday morning I have 10 minutes to explain my boss what I'm going to do for the week. And he doesn't need to understand the theories, and which is something that we spend like hours on in the classroom, which is actually really good because you should have a solid foundation of what that theory means, and then figure out how to use it, but without the long-winded definition. Just how are you going to implement it? So I'm going to show you now like how I use semiotics and selling, and also like 3 different applications of 3 different theories. So semiotics and selling, like the whole goal is to define, break down, and recreate different life worlds. So when you create an experience for the customer or try to study motivations of why an investor would invest in your product, you need semiotics to really break down and create this life world to see why every interaction is taking place. So once you understand the interactions, you understand the cultural background, the history of why the social reality has been created, then you are able to recreate that interaction, or you are able to induce a particular one that you want them to do. Like, for example, buy an orange. Then you understand why have they been buying apples, and then figure out how can you now sell the orange to this apple purchaser. So once you understand where everything comes from, you're able to activate something. So that's what semiotics can really help you in understanding. So the 3 theories that I will take you through is one is Gottheiner's approach of pop culture. So the way I've approached it is in my finance job, where I basically used it to understand the Russian invasion and how that influenced financial markets and how that has influenced long-term energy freedom of Europe and the whole conversation around it. The second would be the topic of like transmediality and how that influences the modern supermarket storytelling. And third is the topic of intermediality, which is how, and I will use it in a different way, which is like how traditional Japanese sweets, also known as wagashi, use seasons to incorporate it in every element of their product making, the way they sell it, the way they communicate about it, everything. So the way like Gottheimer approaches like pop culture is he defines this 3-way long relationship among one, which is cultural objects that are produced by an industrial process, 2, a set of institutions that produce and distribute such objects on a relatively huge scale, and 3 is a collective or social group / mass audience who use objects within a setting. Now, you don't have the opportunity usually to explain that this entire theory exists. So I've kind of written a translation of something that would be easier to say in a professional context, which would be this action has not been taken in a silo. There is a surrounding world that has influenced it. And pop culture, what we see around us, like, is definitely one of them. And instead of like the most like easy explanation would be Disney, but I want to show you how to do it in the financial context. Okay, I wish I could ask you these questions, but the first thing I thought of was, okay, pop culture and finance. The biggest crossover I would think of would be NFTs. Like, to really understand, like, why is this monkey worth like millions of like dollars? Or maybe not anymore, but now it is, but it used to be. I think a good way of explaining it is if you see the way finance has been portrayed in movies. If you see The Wolf of Wall Street, for example, I took a picture of DiCaprio like throwing cash out of his yacht. That's the perception people have, which is why a lot of them go into finance, because they think that they will become really, really rich really fast and have so much money. They'll have bottles of champagne, etc., etc., because that's the kind of perception that has been created through a lot of movies. So if we do the first half, I'm thinking of is like Wolf of Wall Street, and that's why you see a lot of retail investors, which are people who are not like actually professional investors, investing into like crypto, because of the whole pop culture idea of that you will become rich quick if you invest in finance and you do all these certain things. The second aspect would be the Wall Street aspect, and that how like pop culture has created a whole idea of Wall Street is like the best financial center in the world, and like that's where all the money moves, etc., etc. So at work, we were actually approached by the Qatar, by Qatar, to create their financial center, because they believe that to be an actual powerhouse in this field, you must have your own financial center. But why was that done? Is because if you draw parallels with how pop culture shows Wall Street, like one day Qatar would like to be portrayed in that way as well, which is how they might get more cash flow than they would have if they didn't have a financial center of their own. So the third part I would actually like to explain, which is something I worked on quite recently, was the idea of green bonds and how they became more popular after like the Ukraine-Russian war, and how it basically helps to set the tone of today's financial markets. Like financial markets are often portrayed as like, okay, like I just want more money. It's all about profit. It's all about selfish interests. But the more you study about the financial markets, like you realize that financial events don't make any sense by themselves. Like it must be interpreted like in the light of a specific point of view and be linked to the surrounding world and what's actually happening. So the green bonds by themselves would not have become so popular in the past, like a year and a half, 2 years, if the war had not have happened. So we have to recall the essential role of human interaction within the financial reality in order to consider each market as a particular language and the interaction as a sign of social intersubjectivity. So the translation just means that investors are also shaped by their social cultural background that they live in. So the influence of pop culture and the media coverage of the Russian-Ukrainian war on the increasing growth of the green bonds, because all these green bonds started to get marketed as an urgent demand for energy freedom. Why is it being energy freedom now? What, like about Europe's energy freedom in specific? It's because of the way like Russia has always been portrayed in the war. I mean, in movies. Russia is about communism, Russia's evil, and that's how like a lot of Western films have been made. So that also contributes to the public's opinion of Russia. Therefore, the whole of Europe used to be really reliant on Russia's oil. Hence, hence they're investing now on green energy sources, renewable energy sources to gain this kind of energy freedom. But the key point is like, have you ever thought like why such an intense search for alternative sources was not initiated, let's say after like Libya, Iraq, Venezuela, or Iran? Why is it being done like after the Russian invasion? So that's a key aspect of how pop culture influences. Because if you think about it, like why was green bonds not popular like 4 years ago, when everyone was still talking about climate change, the world's ending, there are heat waves, etc., etc., everybody's going to die? No, it was actually this war that really helped propel the demand for it. So the second example I would like to give you is about transmediality. So again, I provided a definition of what you would learn in the classroom, which is basically transmediality is a process of integral elements of fiction that get dispersed systematically across multiple delivery channels for the purpose of creating a unified and coordinated entertainment experience. So it's not based on individual character-specific plots. Rather, I would translate this as you use different mediums where each makes its own unique contribution to the unfolding of a full story. And this actually helps like push consumers to become hunter-gatherers across narratives, if you must say. So the idea of food hall was all about like the love of food. And we tried to put that at different aspects, whether it be the in-store experience, the posters. We tried to extend food hall into a cookery studio, and instead of for the love of food, it became for the love of cooking. But it's all about the consumer experiencing different like areas of the store itself or the digital experience or just different elements to then understand this fictional world that like a strategist or an advertising person is then creating. The key goal is also to ensure that no consumer knows everything at one point. Every point, like you learn something more. So it's in a way like Pokemon. Like if you go to a supermarket today and then think about Pokemon, you'd be like, okay, you have a Pikachu, you have a Raichu. If you want to make the Pikachu into like evolve, so that would be like different kind of recipes, tips, pairings, info. You can have different species of Pokemon. So then you understand, okay, there's no like, there can be a purple cauliflower, red cauliflower, green cauliflower, etc. So it's all about like creating this full story in this full world inside a certain space. And then you have the consumers come back and you stitch them together. The consumers then stitch together a picture from the dispersed information that they have found, and they find it quite exciting. just to show you like different places that we created. Like, for example, there was a farmer's market, then you can walk like a few steps, you take the elevator and you can go to like the coffee lab, you can go to the spice market. So the consumer is experiencing food at so many different levels, like that for them, it becomes really exciting. Okay, last but not the least is intermediality. So when you learn semiotics, you'll learn a lot about mediality, like the different media, the different mediums, and then you have to understand all these different aspects. So intermediality is basically the relations between media conventionally perceived as different, may designate cultural phenomena involving interrelations between two or more media, etc., etc. To simply say, it just means how can you use different media to communicate the same thing. So this is a little bit different if we look back at the supermarket example, because the supermarket example is about transmediality, where everything is saying little bit of a larger picture, whereas intermediality is going to show you how you can use the same thing, you communicate the same thing through different ways. Mediality is really confusing, to be very honest. It took a lot of time to understand the differences. So just a simple example would be if like Wagashi is created for, let's say, spring or autumn, everything must follow the same story. So in the in-store collateral, you have like these blossoms, or you have like a super lush tree, and then that has to translate into what ingredients are being used to create the wagashi and how it looks. And now if you see the packaging, you understand that everything follows the same story. They're communicating exactly the same thing, but just in different forms. And there's also like you can use it in a digital way. For example, they were doing like when the cyclones were coming, they were kind of making that into different types of desserts and then selling them. That was pretty interesting, actually. And when you put it on social media, again, it should basically, if you see all of these things, they're all communicating the same thing, which I think is really interesting because they're all different like media. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. And these are my details if you would like to chat further, if you're looking for an internship in marketing or content writing, or really want to understand how semiotics can be used further, then I think I can help you with that. So thank you.
Okay. So
That's a lot of talking.
Thank you so much, Rhea, for this very exciting talk. And now it is time for some questions from our audience. And
Yes.
just a reminder, everyone, please type your questions to the Q&A box.
Okay.
Yeah, I will ask the questions. So the first one is that why did you choose semiotics at the University of Tartu?
Okay, so firstly, semiotics at University of Tartu is probably the most comprehensive study that you will ever find. When I actually started to look for universities, like I saw some people were teaching 1 or 2 classes, which if you actually want to study semiotics is quite useless. Like you want to understand all the foundations, why all the different fields. There are 3 different fields. There's sociosemiotics, which teaches you about meaning in society. There's cultural semiotics, which is understanding meaning through culture. And then the third is like biosemiotics. Then you understand how fish and birds and like plants, everything makes meaning. So if you really are interested in learning, like for sure, like semiotics and how to use it properly, then I would suggest University of Tartu and not just a one-off class. Because to be honest, I've seen a lot of recent presentations from marketing agencies, and the way they've used it is a very simplistic format, and you can understand that they have no idea what they're talking about. So that is, it's number 1 at University of Tartu. And a lot of theories have actually come from Lotman, who went to University of Tartu as well. So that's a good place to learn, guys.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so the next question is that could you recommend some literature to read in pop culture?
There's a really good series. It's called Semiotics in, and then the one that I really liked was Semiotics in Drink and Drinking, because it explained why like we have certain things like vodka or like the lexicon of coffee, and it teaches you like how pop culture can influence like how we even consume liquids. Like it's a really cool book, but they have a whole series where you can do semiotics of religion, semiotics of literally everything, emojis. So you can just check that out. Also, you can just write to me if you want more, so I can just email you some things.
Okay, that sounds actually interesting. Very interesting. I have to write that down. But yeah, the next question is that the Ukrainian-Russian example was pretty interesting. Are there any articles to read as well about it?
I would say like I've not really seen any like semiotics related article. It was more like this is what I learned in my academia, and I felt like because I was working on a project about a wind farm in Estonia, like, and I had to position it to potential investors. That was a really good way to go. And the more I read online, everyone kept using the word energy freedom. So I was like, okay, I guess I now know what keyword I have to use to sell it. But there are obviously more on the financial side, like papers, not semiotic side.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is that do you use semiotics in your everyday work?
Yes. I wouldn't like, as I mentioned before, like semiotics isn't like accounting per se, where you're like, okay, I have to use this formula to do this one thing. It's a really good tool to basically do your everyday work.
Yeah.
It really helps like take it to the next level because you kind of can already perceive something and you work much faster because you already know how that person is going to react. It's kind of like fortune telling in a weird way. So yeah.
Yeah. So would you recommend studying semiotics for a person whose profession is an account director?
So I just have a before I answer that question, like I don't really know how like because account director is like you can use it in different fields. So I'm not sure what that means. So if they can like provide me more what they mean by account director, that would be great and I can answer.
So maybe the person who asked this question, if you want to, you can just explain it a bit further in the question and answer box, and we will come back to that. But the next question is that how did you prepare for applying to the program?
To be honest, when I went to the University of Tartu, I was the least prepared person over there. Like I just went to SemioFest. I saw this and I was like, I really want to learn about this. So I did read, like the only thing I did was get this one book called Semiotics of Drink and Drinking. And then I read, and then in the application form, I just explained what I was looking for in semiotics. So it wasn't like I had like a whole background already. I was actually the one who had the least because I didn't do linguistics or any of the key things that people use to get into semiotics traditionally. But I think it's fine, honestly. They teach you everything from scratch, so you don't have to like know everything. Like everyone comes in, they're like, "Oh, have you read Bakhtin? Have you read this?" I'm like, "No, I've never read any of these people." But I survived and I did fine. Like, so if you want to prepare, I would say like just get one of these books where you have like easy explanations of what semiotics could be rather than trying to get into something too deep, which honestly your brain is not ready for. It'll make you more confused and scared than you need to be. So apply like prepare less is what I would say.
Okay, thank you. So what were the most exciting courses that you have taken apart from your mandatory courses?
So in the mandatory, you basically take all three fields as I mentioned previously. And I personally really liked sociosemiotics. So I did a whole course on subcultures to understand what that means, like what is a subculture? How do you use semiotics to understand for example, like hip hop, like why does that exist? And that was a really cool class. Also, there was one, it's a mandatory course, but it actually is really good. It's like how to like use these models and applications. It's by this professor called Katre. And she is amazing because she always like has every week you have to basically take the model or the theory and think about how it works in like the real life. For example, one of my friends, she uses it all the time to study K-pop videos. So it's a completely different field than what I do, but you can use semiotics quite easily like that. So those two courses are really good.
Okay, thank you. So what were the assignments and exams like at your program?
So there are not many exams. I think there was like one or two exams at max, but the assignments are a lot of like research and like writing about a certain topic, which you have to choose by yourself. Like nobody gives you a topic. They just show you like these are different models you will learn throughout your course. And then you have to you have to write whatever you feel like, which is the hardest part. But obviously all the professors are there to guide you. So they're really helpful. But it's also really good if you kind of have some knowledge of what you like to write about. Like everyone in my course, like they came in with something that they were good at, like, and then they would focus and use that in that particular way. Like I always made sure I was putting marketing into mine, which is how I got to grow more in the marketing field and at the same time in semiotics, because then you can use it together and see how to build it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But it's pretty easy. There are usually some presentations in the first year. You do most of your presentations in a group, so there are people to help you. It's not bad. Like it's pretty easy. The hardest is your thesis. That's 2 years of your life.
Yeah. Okay. So was there an internship during the studies? And if yes, could you please share your experience?
So as I was already in my master's and I've previously got work experience, I did not take the internship route. I kind of did a lot of freelance projects. So I worked on like one was the app idea. I also worked on an astrology app in India, like a couple of other projects, but I was using semiotics to help myself get better at, again, marketing, but these kind of projects. If you want an internship, all you have to do is ask Katre or Teet, and they help set something up. If you want something in my field, I can help you. And the alumni are super like helpful if you require anything. If you want to work in Talent or Tartu, then yeah, it's up to you. Honestly, everything is up to you and what you want to do out of the course. Everyone is there to guide you, but no one will tell you like this is the answer. It's up to you. So that's why some of my answers are a little vague.
Okay, thank you. So the next question says you had an excellent presentation, and the person who is asking is also a second-year master's student of semiotics, and she wanted to ask you what is the difference between transmediality and cross-mediality in your opinion?
Can I come back? I don't even remember what cross-mediality is anymore. Like just write to me. I will come back. I will answer that in a short time. But I know when I did the supermarket, I remember I used transmediality and cross-mediality. I just can't remember how I used it. So I will write back to you in a bit.
Okay, I can also, when we send the following email to participants, I can put your contact to email, so the person gets her answer. But okay, so the next question is that what is the best book where the topics in semiotics and marketing are discussed side by side?
If you want like semiotics and branding, that's a really good one called Fire Signs. It basically explains you like different like signs that exist, like why does it, to be easy, like a traffic light, why does it have these certain things? So you can build your base from there, Fire Signs, and then you move on to, there's so many books to be honest, like you could just do semiotics and marketing, because I think advertising is probably where the largest amount of semioticians go, because they become like more cultural strategists. So that's usually the route people take. So if you do like cultural semiotics And advertising, there's so much, like, it depends what you are trying to get by it. And then you can ask me again and I can send you more specific things.
Okay, thank you. So could you please tell a bit about the social life in Tartu? Maybe your best social activities or something?
I mean, I had a pretty good social life in Tartu. Like, the only thing is obviously the weather. Like, you have to know that it's going to be really cold, but there are enough winter activities as well. Like, that's the only thing you should prepare for. There's so, like, we have like our usual bars. Like, it's like going to a college town. Like, it's not like you're going to a huge city. It's going to a college town, and that's your experience. And there's so many like different majors that you will, like, people from different majors. Like, my roommates were IR, Russian studies, so many different things. So you get to interact with a lot of different people. But yeah, social life is fine. It depends. You play a sport, you have some kind of thing that you like to do, like, go for it. Like, oh,
Yes.
also there are a lot of hackathons. The one thing that I really like about Estonia, or like even Tartu in specific, is like the opportunities they get for you to be, if you're more into like entrepreneurship, coming up with your own ideas. I joined this robotics hackathon. It was really random. I didn't know what I would do in it because I know nothing about robotics, but they needed someone in like marketing or advertising, or there were lots of semioticians who also participated to help them better the product. So that's also a good thing. But yeah, social life is fine. Like, but you'll just see your professors in the same bars that you go to. You should be prepared for it. Like,
Yes, I totally agree with you. Even though it is mainly dark and cold in the winter here, there's still a
yeah.
lot of social life with the students.
Mhm.
But yeah, the next question is that where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay, so I would like my own company, to be very honest. Like, it's something I'm working towards right now. Um, I would like a blend of like semiotics and financial advertising. That's something I'm trying to build on. Maybe more things later on, but right now I would like in 5 years to have my own company so I can work between, in like, Estonia, India, probably Thailand in the winter. Like, so it's fine.
Okay, thank you. So we can go back to the question we skipped. I guess it was about so do you recommend studying semiotics for a person whose profession is an account director? And she means it in an advertising agency.
Yeah, like if you're working in advertising, knowing semiotics will always help you. Like, at no point will it not help you. You could be any, like, yeah. Also, if you would like to move in your career from being an account director to start to moving to be a like more strategist related roles, then semiotics is going to help you a lot.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's a question, could you give some tips on how to write a successful motivation letter?
First, understand why you want to study semiotics. Like, the key is like, what do you want to do out of your own life? Like, as like, you don't have to have the clearest path. Like, I remember before, like when I wrote my motivation letter, I was working in mostly like the food business. So I wrote it all about how I wanted to use semiotics to understand food better and like how to market it. That's not what I do anymore. But I was really motivated to understand like why a consumer picks up a certain fruit, or like how can I get them to do certain something. It wasn't like, it was just my personal motivation. I so i think for the motivation that I just stay true to yourself and why you actually want to learn the decoding or encoding of meaning.
Yeah, I agree with you. But so the next question is that did you have any kind of culture shock when you came to Estonia?
Not really. Like it's just another country. Like people are really welcoming. Like I would say, like people, like some people say, like I think in the introduction meeting that Estonians are a little bit more like cold. Like if you come especially from a warmer country where people are more like open or talk loudly, Estonia is a little bit more like on the quieter side, a little more reserved. But to be honest, like I have so many like Estonian friends with so much fun. Like there's I don't see it like as it's a hard to integrate into like the culture. So it's a really nice culture actually. So I quite liked it. And there are no rules to be honest, except just don't talk as loudly as you would in your own country. Is the only thing I've learned. Like
Yeah, I have seen that about other countries that Estonians are a bit more quiet.
they're quiet for the first three meetings, and after that, like I
Yeah,
don't know, like they could be like Latin American for all I know. Like
we just might be shy at the beginning.
yeah, I think it's just the cold weather. Like initially, once you break through it, you're fine. Like,
Yeah.
and there's so many different cultures over here, and it's really okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Except the winter, again, that's a different kind of shock. Like that's not culture related. Like, but you can get like a really good jacket and you're fine.
Yeah, we're used to that. But okay, so the next question is that what are you the most proud of from your experience in studying at the University of Tartu?
What am I most proud of? The fact that I came in with not knowing what semiotics is, and now I'm giving a speech on like why you should join University of Tartu to learn semiotics. I think that whole journey was like really good, and I'm really proud of like what I've managed to take from it and build for myself today, I guess. So yeah.
That is actually very impressive, in my opinion. So we have a few more questions. Do you speak Estonian? And do you think speaking Estonian is needed to find a job in Estonia after graduation?
I tried my best to speak Estonian. The max I can say is likapan. So I don't think that that's useful in my workplace. But I also worked for a British company that has moved to Estonia. So actually, that's also a good thing. Like a lot of UK companies came to Estonia after Brexit. So there's that. There's also so many startups that have like they need like a lot more foreigners, to be honest, because they need to grow their. I mean, if you see the population of Estonia is probably like 1 million people, but they have all like I'm pretty sure 1 million of them have startup ideas. So you're pretty set, like you will find a job. Like, but the only time is like when you're finding a job, don't start off with saying you're a semiotician. Like say like what other skill you have, and then say that you studied semiotics. Like that's a pro tip that I can tell you from applying.
That sounds like a very useful tip, actually, for anyone who is studying semiotics. So the next question is study abroad available at semiotics, and did you do exchange studies?
I personally didn't do an exchange because I have already studied abroad like a lot. So I wanted to just, do like stay in Estonia. Also, it was COVID, so it wasn't like the best time to be like moving around. But you do have a lot of options available, like around Europe, especially. My friend went to Bologna to study like semiotics and men's fashion, actually. And my other friend went to Aberdeen to study as well. So there are a lot of options for like a semester. The best time to take it is one semester, like your third semester, so one before the thesis is due. I wouldn't suggest doing much during your thesis time. Just do your thesis. Like, but the third semester is like prime time where everyone goes for Erasmus.
Okay, those examples you brought out seem very interesting, actually. So, okay, if you had to do it again, the whole master's in semiotics, what would you do differently?
That's That's a really good question. I'm not really sure what I would do differently. Like, I feel like if once you decide to do semiotics in Estonia, you've already done something differently. Like, in the class, oh yeah, okay, I'll tell you something. So initially, I thought like there was a pressure to decide what my thesis topic was, and I was leaning towards cultural semiotics because like I didn't know enough about socio at that point of my life. That was, I think, first or second semester. But then over time, I learned that I could change it. And then my end thesis topic, I was the third one that I kind of started writing on and the one that I liked the most. So if I had to do it differently, I would have first like chosen to do socio, bio, and cultural. So I understand all three. And then I choose what I actually like. Like I wasn't sure what it was before, so I kind of made a rash decision, but you don't have to. Like actually there's no pressure. Like it was more like a self thing. So that's something I would change.
Okay, thank you. So, did
Oof,
you
I don't
have,
have- Oh, there's
sorry,
more questions.
there's a few more,
Okay.
but not long anymore. Did you have an admission interview and what to expect from it?
Wow, this admission interview, like initially I felt a little scared because there were like literally the like six people sitting there and then they all are asking questions. And I remember like one person asking, like I remember like this professor, like Kalevi, his name is cool because he's really cool. But he was like, do you know what biosemiotics is? And of course, like I kind of Googled the word a little bit before, or like simultaneously I was Googling things. Um, and I said something really random. It had nothing. Like now that I went, once I went into it, like I was so embarrassed that I even like said something like that in my admission interview. So the thing is, don't freak out. Like they just do it for fun, I think, where they kind of know. Like if you Google semiotics right now online, you don't get the idea of that there are three different fields. So they're kind of like introducing a little bit that these things are coming. They just want to see that you're confident, but also like you're open to learning new ideas. You have to just, they're really like, it's like a conversation with like six people and they're just asking questions at the same time. But you don't have to be afraid. Like it's cool. It's mostly just to understand who you are, like and how, like
Yeah, I totally agree with you because some interviews I've had at school were mainly about them like trying to understand who I am. So I totally agree with that. But
Yeah.
yes, I think we can have the last question. So, what is something at the University of Tartu that you absolutely loved being a part of? Is there something that stands out?
Mm. I really like being part, like as I mentioned, this robotics hackathon. Like it was really different than my usual personality, where I don't like to basically go out and be the first one to like go pitch an idea or something. Like I'm more like the backup. Like you want to create your idea, I'll create it for you. Like I'm just not going to be the first one there. But it really helped push me out of my shell. And there are a lot of opportunities like that University of Tartu gives, like the startup day, for example. So if you like to like be involved and like uh, try different things, then there are a lot of opportunities over there that Tartu gives you. Oh yeah, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Before you come to Estonia and look for a job, please make sure LinkedIn is up to date because Estonia functions on LinkedIn. So that's another pro tip.
So many nice pro tips from you. Thank you. But okay, great. I believe we have covered all the questions
Oof.
from our audience. I would like to thank our presenter, Rhea, for sharing her experience and for a great talk on an interesting topic. And yes, so thanks to our audience for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening to me talk for like 45 minutes. But
It was a very good talk.
if you have any questions, like please email me. I will email whoever asked me about cross mediality later. And yeah.
Yes, I will make sure your email is on the email that goes to the participants today.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
yeah, so but a few things before we wrap up. If you are a student, the future student, and planning to apply to Semiotics program this year, the application period has already started, and the deadline is on 15 March. And there is also going to be a virtual meeting with the program director where you can ask any questions you have regarding the program. We will send you the information along with a recording of today's talk. So thank you again to everybody for joining us today. Thank you especially to Rhea, and I wish you all a nice evening.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, guys.